Welcome to Unwind, a weekly review of everything MacStories and more. I'm John Voorhees, and with me, of course, is Federico Viticci. Hey, Federico.
Hello, John. How are you?
I'm doing okay today. Hey, Federico, we are going to lead off with two Apple stories related to the killing of George Floyd by police in Minnesota and the protests and violence that have followed. And before we get into the details of those two stories, though, I wanted to acknowledge the problem of racism in my country. The protests and violence that we've witnessed make this all seem really new, but the reality is, of course, that it's not, and that racism has been a problem in the United States for a very, very long time, and it needs to stop. And I just wanted to say that on behalf of both you and me and MacStories itself, we condemn it. And
Yeah.
I'd also like to just add that people may have noticed that you and I have been a little quiet on social media over the past week or so. And I don't want anybody to take that the wrong way. Federico and I have spent an awful lot of time thinking and talking about what has been happening in the U.S. over the past couple of weeks. And we've also spent a lot of time listening and learning from the conversations online and elsewhere. And I know it may seem kind of strange, given how vocal we are and how much we like to talk about tech. But we're also very private people at heart, and in those ways, we draw kind of hard boundaries around some of the things we share, and that's one reason we've been a little quieter this week. We thought it was more appropriate to be listening and learning than anything else. Yeah. And that doesn't mean, though, that we don't care, and it doesn't mean that we aren't doing things to address racism ourselves in our own ways. We absolutely are. We just don't post about it, But if you want to find out ways that you can play a part to be part of the solution to these problems, we'll include a link in the show notes and things with ideas and links that you can use to learn more and play a part.
Yeah. And I just wanted to say that I tend to be vocal about the things I know. And when I don't know about a particular issue or a particular topic, I always prefer to sit back and learn and read and listen to other people. And what we've been seeing, and of course, I'm from a different country, right? I'm based in Italy. I've been born and raised in Italy my entire life, and what we know here about racism in the United States is, of course, it mostly comes, and especially this was happening when I was growing up, right? That I did not have easy access to the internet, or perhaps I didn't know where to look, but we only got summaries, right, on the news, for example, here in newspapers, of what was actually happening in the United States. I had no real grasp of the situation. And of course, I still don't, honestly. And it's still something that it's very challenging for me to understand, which is why I've been reading, I've been, making a list of videos and documentaries that I want to watch, for example, on Netflix, I really want to watch the 13th. It's a docuseries on Netflix about crime and incarceration in the United States and how that's a problem for the African American people in the U.S. But especially during these times, I always prefer to learn and sit back and be quiet and listen and just learn more about things that I don't know, instead about being vocal and instead of just mindlessly sharing a hashtag without necessarily knowing what I'm talking about. And I mean, of course, I think it goes without saying that we at MacStories, of course, we do believe that Black Lives Matter, and we do believe that racism is something that is just not right, especially in 2020. I mean, it shouldn't exist, right? And yet, still a problem.
Right.
So I think, and I speak for both of us here, I think when I say that we've been listening, we've been reading, we've been try to help privately without making a big deal about it on social networks. And maybe some people like to operate in different ways, and that's fine. But as you mentioned, I'm a very private person when it comes to these matters, and it's just who I am, that I just prefer to be quiet and learn and read and listen. So, yeah.
All right, Federico, let's dive into those first two stories because they're related. And the first one happened on Tuesday when Apple blacked out its For You and Browse sections of the Music app, eliminating basically all the curated playlists and radio stations except for a single radio station that there was a button right in the middle of the screen that you could tap or click on and listen to. And this was part of a wider movement in the music industry at large. And in response to, other companies did the same sort of thing, Spotify and others, that was designed to show solidarity and support for Black Lives Matter and to raise awareness that way. And that was on Tuesday, I guess. And then subsequently on Thursday, Tim Cook published an open letter on apple.com that was featured on the homepage that was entitled Speaking Up on Racism. And I'd encourage everyone to read that in full if you haven't. I mean, I think it's very well written. It's a interesting and thoughtful piece on what Apple intends to do to play its part. Basically, I guess the gist of it is Tim Cook says, this has always been an important thing to us, but we need to do better and we need to do more. And he explained some of the things that entails. And it's one of those types of letters, relatively short, that's very hard to encapsulate without reading it out loud, which I'm not going to do here in a summary fashion. But we've got it linked on MacStories. We'll have it in the show notes. And I would encourage, if you haven't seen it, hopefully you have seen it, but if you haven't, definitely read it. It's a good piece.
Yeah, and there's a paragraph that really stood out to me toward the end of the story, where basically the gist of it would be that many people right now are just wishing for a return to normalcy, to a sense of like a normal life. But that in itself, we must recognize that for a lot of people, that's a sign of privilege, right? To return to a normal life, where for a lot of people, normal life is not fair and it's not equal, it's not just. So I thought that was a really well written letter, and it's good to hear that Apple they are committed to doing more, and especially when it comes to Tim Cook mentioned looking inward and pushing for more inclusion and more diversity internally at Apple. So that's good to know, and it's a good letter, and it takes 2 minutes of your time, so go check it out. It's on apple.com.
All right, Federico, we had a few other stories on the site this week as well. It was otherwise not a lot going on in the tech world, very understandably, but Eve Systems did begin taking pre-orders on the Eve Cam, and this is a HomeKit secure video-enabled indoor camera that I profiled when I went through all the press releases that came out of CES this year, and it's one that's kind of excited me.
That's how I remembered this camera.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like it because it's got a really slim profile. It's black. It's kind of sits on a little stick where you can move it's on a bit of a hinge so that you can kind of move it around to fit whatever the surroundings are. It can be mounted with a metal plate on a wall. It's like a metal plate with adhesive on the back, and then it uses magnets to stick. So it's not like you have to drill holes in your wall, which is kind of nice.
Right, interesting.
It's a lot like, I guess, the Logitech Circle 2, except the Circle 2 can also be used outdoors. So this is only an indoor camera. It's $150. It is being marketed primarily as a privacy-centric camera because it is only HomeKit. It doesn't have its own, back-end service that you subscribe to and your video gets uploaded to some Eve Systems server. Instead, you use it in conjunction with an iCloud storage plan. And just to refresh everybody's memory, you need to have either a 200 gigabyte plan, which supports one camera, or a 2 terabyte plan, which supports up to 5 cameras. And those cost $3 a month or $10 a month. And so, I'd like to get my hands on one of these and try it. They're not actually out yet, so I haven't. They come out June 23rd, but you can go to the Eve Systems homepage now and pre-order if you want to be one of the first to get it, and we'll have the story in the show notes.
This looks really good. I'm not in the market for yet another HomeKit camera right now. I think we're all full with cameras over here with the Logitech Circle 2s that we have. But it looks really nice, and I'm intrigued by the magnetic attachment that you mentioned. It sort of looks like a webcam. It looks very compact to me. I do like the design, honestly. I think it's much more elegant and refined than, say, the Circle 2.
Yep.
Yeah, I like this. It's too bad, really, that I really don't need another camera. Otherwise, like if I was in the market for a camera right now, I would totally get this one. I think, at least for indoor use.
Yeah, I've got kind of a mixed system right now because I've soured on the Canaries and I'm slowly trying to replace those. So maybe I may pick one of these up at some point, but I'm not sure yet. We'll see. Federico, we also have a watch challenge coming up this weekend on Saturday, tomorrow, which is the World Environment Day challenge. And this is compared to some of these challenges that Apple's done in the past, this is a relatively simple one. You just need to close your stand ring, which is standing for at least 1 minute for 12 of the hours of a day. And I suppose this is in part probably because a lot of people are on lockdown still with the pandemic and other reasons. But yeah, it's nice to see another one of these challenges. It's been a little while since we've had one.
This should be relatively easy to get, right? I mean, you just need to close your stand rings. There's not much else that you can do. And I guess,
especially on the weekend, I mean, I find that it's no problem on the weekends when you're not, most people aren't working as much. I mean, I don't have a problem with it either. I think I just wave my arms around too much and then I set it off even when I'm sitting at my desk.
Yeah, I mean, I think I should be able to to achieve this challenge. I think it should be pretty easy. But you never know. The stand rings are kind of funny in that, like, I remember a couple of years ago where I was trying to maintain this streak going in the activity app based on the closing the rings with the watch. And one time when I traveled internationally, something horrible happened. And because of the time zone change, I didn't close my rings. And so I needed to go back because I did actually try to stand during the flight. It was like an 11-hour flight from London to California. And I actually did stand multiple times because I knew I was supposed to be standing, but then something horrible happened. And so basically later I had to go inside the health app on my phone and create a fake workout with a duration of 1 minute to make sure that I like, even if you do it, it applies retroactively. And so you do get the stand hour, even if you create a 1 minute workout, because it assumes that if you worked out for 1 minute, then you were standing. So
yeah. I've seen similar things happen when I've flown to Europe myself, and you feel like you're a little bit cheated because somehow you're in an airplane and the clock changed and you've been up for like 20 hours, yet somehow you didn't close your stand ring. All right, I guess the last story that was on the site this week that I want to mention is a new edition of Shortcuts Rewind, which is a story that I did about a couple of shortcuts that you built a while back that relate to notes. And you've got a lot of notes shortcuts in our shortcuts archive on MacStories that you've created. And I decided we ought to probably split these up into a couple installments on Shortcuts Rewind, because what I don't want to do is when I write these is to overwhelm people with too much information. So try to condense it a little bit this time and to split it up so that it wouldn't be too much at once. But these two shortcuts are ones that help you find your notes. The next installment will be about note creation, but these are one called Find Notes and another called View Recent Notes. And Find Notes with Menu, which is the full name, what it does is it pops up a little pop-up menu that has a list of predefined notes that you want to have quick access to. And then it has a final option of searching for any note. And it's good. Both of these, I think, are very handy to use, just even if you don't want to understand how exactly they work. But I think they also do a nice job of introducing people in a relatively simple way to some of the scripting actions in shortcuts, things like if otherwise actions and counting actions, list actions, and that kind of thing. Plus some of the note-specific actions like find note and show note, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Here's to hoping for better integration with Apple Notes in iOS 14. I really hope that we do get more extensive actions when it comes to appending data to notes. With actions that go beyond plain text, and maybe even retrieving data from Apple Notes. with the ability to retrieve rich text and images and attachments and all that kind of stuff that right now is not supported in shortcuts.
All right, Federico, let's switch on over to the club. What did we have in the MacStories Weekly this week?
All right, so first off, we had Tempo as a favorite. Tempo is a utility for runners. So if you're the kind of person who likes to run as your favorite workout and type of exercise, Tempo is a fantastic utility that provides you with a dashboard of your previous runs, and you can plot them on a map. Running is not something that I like to do or that I can do. Unfortunately, it's not good for my legs, but because of a previous surgery that I had. But I've been aware of Tempo for a couple of years now, and I think it looks really, really nice. It's that kind of utility that makes me wish I was a runner because I would totally use it. We also have an extension from article from Ryan on TV Plus and the issues that we've seen recently with the adoption of the channels feature. So channels will be a way for third-party content providers to plug directly into the Apple TV interface, the TV app. And we've seen some notable exclusions from channels. For example, HBO recently pulled, I believe, all of their channels integration. Is that right? Because I have to ask you, John, because I don't get HBO in Italy.
Yeah, they did. As part of going to HBO Max, they pulled out of channels.
Yeah. So Ryan wrote about that. And I personally had just this little story about how John failed me, basically. That would be the summary of the story. So a couple of issues ago in MacStories Weekly, John shared a tip on capturing full web pages as PDF documents in Safari on iOS and iPadOS. And while that method works beautifully for normal web pages, let's say, I noticed accidentally, because otherwise, if I didn't go look for it, I just stumbled across this problem, I wouldn't have noticed. Those PDFs, they have this horrible bug where they get saved, but for longer web pages, those PDF documents are cut off at the end. So I noticed this accidentally because I was searching for something contained in a PDF document that I knew I had saved the week prior. And I knew that that specific content I was looking for was contained in that PDF document, but DEVONthink was not finding any results. So I went in and I noticed that the PDF document, which I saved using John's method, was cut off at the end. Like multiple pages were missing at the end. And so in this issue of Weekly this week, I wrote about the solution that I'm trying now, which is actually also the only way that I've found to save web pages as PDF documents while keeping clickable links in the original web page, which is something that no other PDF conversion utility or shortcut that I've tried on iOS before never supported. So I've read about that and what I'm doing now and sort of the apps that I'm using to make this happen in Weekly this week.
This is a lesson in QA and workflows in that I tested that tip on much shorter web pages, and I ran into the exact same bug on a really long story Ryan had done at some point earlier in the week. And yeah, it's unfortunate, but if you are just my system still works if you have short web pages, so maybe use it, maybe don't, but definitely don't use it on something like one of Federico's reviews or an issue of MacStories Weekly. All right, Federico, of course we have in that issue our usual long list of app debuts, updates, new apps that we've discovered, as well as several question and answers from questions that we got from our readers. I also want to take a quick break right now and thank our sponsor, both for MacStories and this episode of Unwind, and that is Backblaze. Backblaze offers unlimited computer backup for both Macs and PCs for just $6 a month with no gimmicks, add-ons, or gotchas. For the simple, low monthly price, Backblaze will back up your movies and your music and your videos and photos, basically all of your data that it matters to you. You can restore files from anywhere in the world directly downloading from the web or using their mobile app, and you can have a backup sent to you to your home on a hard drive overnight with you, which is pretty incredible. Backblaze has over an exabyte of customer data backed up and counting. That's 1 billion gigabytes, Federico. And they have stored over 50 billion files for customers too. So they know what they're doing. They've been handling lots of data for lots of years. Get peace of mind knowing that your files are backed up and secure in the cloud. Just start a free 15-day trial with Backblaze today by visiting backblaze.com/unwind. And it's really important to back your stuff. I just want to pause for a moment and emphasize that, because you don't want to lose all the stuff that you've collected and worked on over the years. And Backblaze is a great way to get it out of your house, out of your home, and into the cloud where it will be safe. So once again, go to backblaze.com/unwind. That way they'll know that you came from MacStories and Unwind. And I want to thank Backblaze for supporting both the site and the show this week. All right, Federico, time for Unwind.
Yes, so I have a couple of music recommendations this week, just stuff that I've been listening to over the past few months that I just thought would be appropriate to share this week with fellow Unwind listeners. So the first one is Homecoming. So you may have heard of this as before being a music album, also a documentary on Netflix. And Homecoming is there's a live album and there's a film on Netflix that you can watch. It's all about Beyoncé's 2018 Coachella performance. This history-defining performance that Beyoncé did a couple of years ago at Coachella. I think it was in April, so just over 2 years ago at this point. And essentially, Homecoming is, the best way that I can describe it is a spectacle to watch and to listen to. So I own this album in high resolution, and I frequently listen to using my high-resolution Sony player and my really good Sony headphones. And usually with live albums, like, you don't get the best quality, right?
Right.
There are some excellent live albums, but most of them, they are not engineered and captured for high-resolution playback. Homecoming, it's amazing to listen to. All the detail was preserved in the transition from a live performance to an audio recording that you can listen to. It's available. I believe the version that I have is in. I mean, I don't want to get too technical, but it sounds amazing. It sounds amazing even if you don't have high resolution. Even if you just want to stream it from Apple Music or Spotify, the songs are fantastic, and Beyoncé is like at the top of her. Just an incredible performance. And in addition to the music album, I would highly recommend watching the film on Netflix, which follows. So there's the entire concert, but it's shot in a way that you also get commentary and like little facts and interviews around the show.
Oh, interesting. I haven't seen that.
Yeah, so it's really good. So one of our favorite parts when Sylvia and I watched it together a few months ago was to see Beyoncé and her crew of dancers rehearse for the show, and like the dedication and the hard work and the practices for months and months. It was just incredible to see this wild show come together. So I would recommend this. Well, first of all, if you like Beyonce, which is kind of obvious, and if you enjoy a really good concert, like, there's no reason not to watch this. But also, if you're the kind of person who appreciates the idea of hard work and dedication, and seeing someone and watching someone at the top of their craft, right, put together something magical and like incredible to listen to and to see. Like, if you're that kind of person that, like, we talked about this last week, actually, the idea of being jealous in a good way of someone else's work, this is totally inspiring to watch. And also, like, this is like a fantastic, like, I was reading a few months ago, actually, I went through some of the articles and the reviews for Homecoming, like all the work that Beyonce put into representing Black culture and history. You may notice during the show, like, there are samples of Nina Simone and Malcolm X, like these, and even the imagery that she used, right? like the fact that on the cover of the album and during the show, she dressed up like the Egyptian queen Nefertiti, I want to say. Like there's a lot of thought that went into like visually and visual representation of Black culture and history, and even in the audio and the samples and the music as well. So it's just an incredible thing, honestly. It's just, I believe, 90 minutes on Netflix, and there's the live album that you can listen to on music streaming services, and you can also purchase, which is what I did. Also, another music album that I have, this is like, you need to, I sort of feel like you need to be in the mood for this sort of album. So it's the title of the album is A Muse in Her Feelings by the Canadian, I want to say, duo Division. So Division is actually spelled out DVSN, but you say, the name is Division. Right. So this would be, I guess, the way that I would describe it is 90s inspired R&B. Okay. And if you're into that type of very chill and warm and just beautifully put together R&B music, it sounds fantastic. This album is like warm honey for your ears if you're in the mood for this sort of music. Again, Sylvia actually discovered Division years ago, I believe, and I've been keeping them in my watch queue, with Music Harbor for quite some time at this point. And this album came out a few months ago. I remember listening to this the first time as we were in lockdown because of COVID-19.
You're just trying to take it easy.
And I was just trying to take it easy and to chill. Yeah. And this album came out at the perfect time. So,
that's good.
Yeah, this is also a good album to recommend this week.
All right. Well, you've gone for 90s inspired R&B. I'm going to go for actual 90s rap. And
you were around then. So
I was. This is actually late 80s too. So, all right, this is a band that I had lost touch with, to be honest, until an Apple event. Maybe, I don't remember which one it was. I think it was last year. I'm not sure if it was the spring event or the fall event, but regardless, there's a song called Rocket Fuel, which is a DJ Shadow song, but it features De La Soul. And I came across it. I was like, oh, I really like this track. So I was listening to it, and I saw that it was featuring De La Soul. I was like, oh, whatever happened to them? It's been so long since I've listened to their music, right? And so I started digging back through both Apple Music and other things to listen to it again. And they're just a great band. They do a ton of sampling. One thing that's unfortunate is that Apple Music really doesn't have very much of their music. One of their first albums, I think it might be their first album, is called 3 Feet High and Rising, which came out in, I think, 1989. And it's still one of the best albums that they've done. And as I was getting ready for the show today, I stumbled across Pitchfork actually reviewed this in 2018 of all years. They re-reviewed 3 Feet High and Rising. And gave it a 10.
But they do that with older albums, which is such a good idea. Yeah,
it is absolutely, and they gave it a 10. I mean, so it gives you an idea of how monumental that album is. And then there's another song that you can see the video is kind of funny because it's very very early 90s. But Set Adrift on Memory Bliss is a track that is set to the music of a Spandau Ballet song that I think you probably will recognize even if you weren't born yet, Federico. But yeah, check out De La Soul. They're a really great band, especially if you like sampled music, because they do a really good job with that. And there's a lot of different interesting styles and other things blended into all these different albums. So I've been kind of enjoying going back and revisiting some of their music, especially some of the stuff that I missed because I lost track with it. And as a result, I hadn't really seen what they were doing in the late 90s and 2000s. All right, Federico, I think that's a good place to stop for this week. Of course, I want to thank our sponsor, both for MacStories and Unwind this week again. That's Backblaze. And, of course, you can also find me and Federico over at MacStories.net writing. And Federico is on both Instagram and Twitter. He's at Viticci. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVOORHWS. Talk to you next Friday, Federico.
Ciao, John.